correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPG, the podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience.
Welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs. I'm here with my friend Steve.
Hello, Steve.
And we're going to talk some RPGs. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about a podcast called the Order 66 Podcast.
Never heard of it.
Yep, me neither.
Never listened.
Not a single episode. Don't know any of those people. Not GM Dave, not GM Chris. No clue who those guys are.
Nope. So, and for those of you unaware, that is sort of an inside joke amongst the Order 66 listeners that people never listen. But regardless, the Order 66 is kind of the founding podcast of the D20 Radio Network. And it is the place to go for Star Wars RPG stuff. They haven't put out anything new in a while, but they are working on kind of a fan-made post where the canon material is at setting. And I'm currently blanking on the name of what they were calling it. But it said, I want to say, roughly 100 years, or 50, 100 years, something like that, after, like the main saga. And it was really, really cool. And just if you're curious at all about the FFG Star Wars system, there is such a wealth of information in the backlog of that podcast. I mean, there's like 200-300 episodes, and many of them are quite long and extremely in depth. And I mean, GM Chris is an encyclopedia of Star Wars stuff. GM Phil is also and has actually written for the line. Not to mention the guests they've had, which is pretty much anyone ever connected with the game. So, if you're into the Star Wars RPG or curious about it, check them out. Like I said, it's called the Order 66. And
not many people I would say are the definitive authority on certain things, but Order 66 is kind of the definitive authority on especially NDS's Star Wars system.
Well, and there is still there is a separate feed. It's still out there. You can find it. The Order 66 Saga Edition podcast.
Correct. That's the other thing.
Which is what they did before.
Yeah. So if you want either Saga Edition or the Narrative Dice Systems version, it's out there. And Order 66 has covered it, and they've done a fantastic job of that because those two guys just, man, there isn't anything half-assed about the two of them.
No, not at all. They're really cool people.
Great guys, and highly recommend that podcast if you're even remotely interested in running or playing in a Star Wars RPG.
Yes, very, very much so.
Well, you had come up with our topic for this week after a sort of long extended hiatus.
Yeah, it's been a scheduling complication for a while here now.
Yeah, my life is always ups and downs. It's like a roller coaster.
And I'm always at work. So.
Yeah. You're always at work. I'm always looking for work.
Right? If we could somehow meet in the middle, it would work for both of us.
I know, right? But, so you had come up with some song lyrics that you wanted to use as inspiration for games?
Well, not so much for games, but honestly, in a sense, GM advice. Although, so let me first get out this bit of nugget of something, and then I'll get into where this other part came from. So the more I thought about it, I've often, heard a song and it makes me think of an idea and, on and on down the line, right? Start planning out some ideas for a game or whatever. And it got me to thinking that, right, especially I'm not a big pop music person. So, pop music may or may not be this way. I listen to a lot of classic rock, metal, progressive rock. That's the bulk of my listening. But really, most of these songs are stories in and of themselves. So, what are we doing when we GM? We're telling a story. So,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
really makes a whole lot more sense than you'd think on the surface that could be a good place to look for inspiration. And then,
There's,
go
yeah.
ahead.
No, go ahead with your shot, with your thought.
Um, and so from that to go back to where the actual last talk episode we had on, where I talked with our Ruby and Fire GM deck about this list of things that he made up about playing Exalted, wrote down, and so on. The kind of key point to his whole thing was that unexpected choices create the story. And somehow in my brain, that connects to, and this is where, if, or like I said, I was thinking about song lyrics that relate to playing games, not so much as inspiration for the story you're going to tell, but as to how you approach them. And the first one that came to mind, and I actually had to look up who wrote the song because if you've listened to classic rock radio, and Steve, being as you grew up where you grew up, this is a song that
102.5 WDVE
that
rocks.
I'm sure DVE played the ever loving crap out of. That's 38 Specials, Hold On Loosely.
Oh, yeah.
But think of that main line to that song and how that so well applies to kind of an overall GMing philosophy. Hold on
Okay.
loosely, but don't let go. If you hang
Yep.
on too tightly, you're going to lose control.
Yep. Yeah, huh. I mean, kind of. It fits really well because like if you're trying too hard and you're trying to corral your players, you're doing it. I mean, to each their own. And if your players like it that way, that's fine. But if you're trying to corral your players, you're doing it wrong. Just let them figure a direction. Let them make mistakes. Oh, I've been saying this for a little while now. Let your players make mistakes. It's okay. Let them make the wrong choice and let them deal with making the wrong choice.
Well, but that goes to Deck's point of interesting choices make the story, right? It's not about there always being a right or a wrong answer. It's about the choice having a meaningful consequence.
Well, yeah, I can get behind that. At the same time, I think sometimes I don't know. While we do live and play in a world that is a lot of shades of gray, there is still black and white and right and wrong choices sometimes. You know what I mean? You still there? Did I lose you?
Yeah. No, no, I'm here. Um
Sorry, you weren't moving, and I was like, oh, I lost him.
oh, okay.
But no, we still there are still right and wrong choices. Like if it's kind of like have you ever seen you've seen Army of Darkness, right?
It's been a while, but yes.
Okay. Instead of writing down what the wizard told him to say, he's like, yeah, 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 I'll remember that. And he gets to the spot and he forgets what he's supposed to say. And that was the wrong choice, right? Like that was the wrong, you made the wrong mistake there. And that could be as easy, like you could chalk that up to, oh, somebody made a bad roll. But if you would have just wrote it down, you wouldn't have never forgot about it, like with anything.
Fair. Yeah, no, I okay. But I think in the context of a game, it's not so much about right wrong, it's optimal and less than optimal.
Yeah. I still think, yeah, you're right in that sense that it is optimal and less than optimal play. Am I doing the exact thing that needs to happen for this story to progress or not?
Right. And I think, where the lyric kind of hit me was that, you're thinking of it in a sense of trying to railroad the players, and that perfectly applies. I was thinking it more of, don't, as a GM, don't get so tightly honed in on what it is that you think that you lose the players having agency and impact on the world.
Yeah. Don't let your players lose that because as soon as they lose the feeling of having any impact on what's happening, I know for myself, if I feel like that, I've checked out.
Right.
I'm no longer interested.
To the song lyric, you know, it has it too tightly, you're going to lose control.
Yeah.
You hang on to your ideas as the GM too tightly, you can lose the interest of the table.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And yeah,
And I mean, not to ever claim that 38 Special was a deep lyrical band, but in this context,
oh, oh, 38 Special was deep lyrics, folks. You heard it here first. The
I said
most.
not to ever claim that.
I'm claiming it. I'm saying it.
Okay. Hey, look, that line I think is deeply profound when it comes to gaming, or those
I,
couple of lines.
yeah. I mean, I, I can't wait for the conversation to happen on Discord after this episode drops. I cannot wait. Um, ah, no, I think you're on the money there. I think you're in the right mindset. I agree with the idea. You just don't want to hold too tightly onto what you're like. Yeah. Um,
I think even as a player, right?
yeah.
Don't get hyper focused on any one thing. You know what I mean? Kind of like experience the story and realize that you're on the ride, even if you know. In some ways, a good game is like riding a little red wagon down a hill. You're kind of
Yeah.
steering, but you're still kind of going where it wants to go.
Yeah, you're steering, but you aren't stopping.
Oh man, this is really kind of dating me, isn't it? 38
What?
Special, little red wagons, radio
I
flyers.
know. Oof. Oh.
Oh man. Um so yeah, that was kind of what sort of kicked it off. And then like I listen to music a lot while I'm working sometimes. And so like I'll just sometimes, lyrics will catch me and I'll go, "Wow, that really applies to this thing." You get certain artists, if you get into some of the singer storyteller type stuff and that really doesn't, I'm not saying that as a genre so much as where that's more what they're doing, Eh, yeah, like some of Ray Wiley Hubbard's stuff could make for amazing game setting.
Oh, I am not kidding when I say I have a Delta Green game set in Florida around a snake farm because I've listened to Snake Farm too many times.
A girl named Ramona.
Yeah, she kind of looks
Ah,
like Tempest Storm. Ah, no, I'm not joking. I legitimately have this game in my list in my game folder of like I made this Delta Green game that I want to run for people at some point that is built around a snake farm because I was like, I really like this vibe. Like I really like how
oh
gross and
yeah,
slimy and yuck it is. He
but
even in the middle of the song he's like, "Ugh."
yeah. Or however it goes. I can't do it like he can. But like that type of stuff, right? If you think about it, so many of his songs, it's just the story he's telling. And
Oh yeah.
how does that not or how could you not take inspiration from, be it how they structure the song to kind of move the up and down. Think about that when you're running a game, right? Vary your
Right.
cadence, vary your tone of your voice, your manner of speaking, whatever, and
Well,
like I
and
said,
there's major story driven songs that I've like really pulled from. There's a song I gotta look up the band. It's called A Mariner's Revenge, and it's by the Decemberists, and it's the
okay.
Mariner's Revenge song, and it's all about this guy that goes on this long drawn out journey to get revenge on another guy, and it's this ship captain, and they end up in
Hmm.
the belly of a whale, and he kills the ship captain. Like it's dark and gritty and creepy, but it's the perfect like mood setting. And also if you're working on something like that where you're like, okay, I need a because we all I don't know all, but I've definitely done my fair share of maritime stories,
Hmm.
and they tend to go one of like two ways. You either go like swashbuckling pirates, or you go with something a little bit I don't know how to put it. Maybe just like they use the ship just to get from place to place, and it's
Right.
not necessarily a story about the ship.
The ship is a
Um
vehicle, not really a part of anything.
Correct. Whereas that is not necessarily even, it's just using the ship and the sailing as a backdrop for reason to tell this story. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that is deeply interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I mean, look, how many I don't even want to think of how many Iron Maiden songs you could use as inspiration, or
Oh,
like, I'm trying to think. They have that one, the video I saw, and I went, "Oh my gosh, this is an RPG adventure waiting to happen." And right now, I know I have it written down somewhere, but I can't think of what the song is.
or, I mean, I like this band, but how many Rush songs? Like, how many 45-minute Rush songs can you listen to and turn into full campaign?
Well, okay, Rush, because since you brought it up, my second song that I had in mind in this is a Rush song.
Okay.
Um, but we'll get to that. But the thing, like Rush, because you had this whole Rush was kind of in that weird proggy,
They
you
are
know.
such a diametrically opposed band to themselves sometimes.
Well, they're
There are
just
these songs. There are these songs that just come and go, and they're earworms, and you could listen to them a million times. And then there are these songs that are like tail ends of their albums that tell these vast, elaborate stories that I could not explain to you where they came from or whose brain they came out of.
well. I know at least in periods, Neil Peart wrote a lot of the lyrics,
Okay.
which I find slightly odd, as Getty was the primary vocalist.
Right.
But maybe because Getty was already doing bass and keyboards, Neil wrote, went,
Getty's a little preoccupied.
now,
Getty Getty Lee is a little preoccupied with what's going on.
here's the thing, too. And I was thinking about that. I had this conversation with someone at work. And I'm not going to say the man hasn't gotten his accolades, but how does it feel to be Alex Lifeson? Because you're arguably the worst musician in your band. Mind you, that would still make you probably the best musician in 99% of other bands.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, because Neil and Getty are just so far up there, in some of, Neil's drum work and
Oh,
his timing. And I mean, like, Danny Carey's the only one that I would probably say is, I mean, well, maybe, maybe like a Vinnie Caliuta or somebody like that. But, like, he is in the absolute god level tier of rock drummers.
oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Getty is just a
Beast.
amazing bass player.
He's just a beast. Getty Lee is one of the like most amazing like oh
And oh yeah, in addition to being an amazing bass player, he's also the lead singer and the keyboard player.
yeah. Yeah, did we forget to mention that he's kind of preoccupied? Like he has a bass strapped around his neck while playing the keyboard and singing. Deal with it. Like
Yeah.
but I mean, and yeah, it's I don't know, man. Rush is just such an interesting case study
Well, and I
because their
think,
early stuff is so interesting and their later stuff is so bland.
and some of their stuff gets so kind of philosophical.
Yes.
And so, all right, I'll hit you with my second one.
Okay.
Which I only came with two in mind. So, but it's a line from Force 10, or a couple of lines from Force 10.
Okay.
And it's like, I think at the maybe the chorus, it's look into the eye of the storm, look out to the force without form, and then look around. And then later in the chorus or whatever, it's look in, look out, look around. And I thought about that and I went, gosh, when you're telling a story, take a moment to look at it from those kind of three perspectives. Look
Right.
into the core of the story and what's happening right there. Look out from inside the situation, and then what's happening around the situation.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And then not to mention, again, going back to Rush and what I was going to bring up, there's the Cygnus X-1 book 1 and book 2 from the album Farewell to Kings and then Hemispheres.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a whole story. It's a whole story that you could listen to. and be like, okay, I want to draw inspiration from this because this is a really cool, like, sci-fi, fantasy, weird 70s story.
Mm-hmm.
There's something uh, we lost in art a while, along the way, because there was something about those, like, 70s fantasy sci-fi, like pulp stories along those lines that I just don't know where it went.
Well, but like I think too, okay, Zeppelin were big Tolkien fans,
Yeah, that's a lot of it
and
too. There's a lot of
remember
people
at
that were
that point
huge
Tolkien
Tolkien
wasn't that
fans.
classic then.
No, no, Tolkien was a pulp novel.
Yeah, what at the time? When did those books come out? Did they come out in the 50s or in the 60s
I I think they came out.
or even later? I
Hold on.
don't remember off the top of my head.
No, it was. Hold on.
Because there's that Zeppelin line about in the darkest depths of Mordor, blah 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 blah, Golem and the Evil One, and
54.
okay,
54. The original Lord of the Rings was published.
so they were only what 20 years old when Zeppelin was putting them out,
Yeah,
putting
yeah. I
in the
and I mean, they were a super popular book series, but I would imagine, and I wasn't around in this time, but I would imagine it was a book series for nerds, kind of like how it is now. Like, like
well,
I
yeah,
would
it
imagine it
wasn't.
wasn't the mainstream, super accepted thing that it is today.
Well, it
It's
wasn't
kind of
the
like the
icon
Dune.
that it is now.
Well, it's kind of like the Dune novels,
Yeah,
or any of the sci-fi that was coming out around that time. Any of the
yeah.
science fiction stories, the Philip K. Dick pulp fiction stuff, your Isaac Asimovs, your, like, what year did Neuromancer come out? I don't remember. I know it was like the 70s or 80s.
I would say late 70s, early 80s off the top of my head. Um,
84. 84. So early 80s. So Neuromancer came a little later, but I think after Neuromancer we see a change in how sci-fi's.
yeah, but I think like, well, too, right? I think there's. I wonder if some of it is the rise in recorded media and in not in its written form. If you think about it, and this is a conversation I've been hearing. There's a podcast I listen to quite a bit called "Life with Strings Attached," which is
Okay.
it's largely centered around guitar building in a way, but music and whatever. And the guy that hosts that podcast has this thing because you know we've all seen it. We've heard talk about how the music industry is changing and because of digital distribution and everything. And his kind of contention is that the music industry, as it was known, when I was growing up, probably, up until say the last 10 years, maybe 15, was
Right.
never really about the music. And you hear that and you're like, what do you mean? And his argument is it was about the technology.
Right.
It was
Right.
about, it was, like, it's kind of like Ryan Dancy talked about network, excuse me, network externality as far as why the OGL was so important to 3X D&D.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, it's a thing like a telephone that gains value based on how many people have it. And so the music industry was basically built on, well, I'm going to make a record of music that you can't hear because this guy lives in Memphis and you live in New York, but you can't play the record without also buying a record player. You know what I mean? And so now that chain of distribution and all that technology doesn't have to be there. And so that's what's really changing that industry. And so I don't know, like I wonder if that has something to do though with because you know how like when you read a book and then you see the movie adaptation of it, it's never the same.
No, it never is.
Sometimes with a few there are a few exceptions that are really really well done, but I wonder if some of this is because when you read a book you build your own mental image,
Yeah,
and
I, I,
with
I firmly believe that's a lot of it.
with the rise especially of easily available and distributable visual media, movies, short film, video, whatever, you see the creator's vision as opposed to reading the creator's words and mentally seeing your own vision, and that kind of, I think, fuels your own creativity.
Yes, I agree with that. That's so I've talked about this before. Dungeon Crawler Carl, right? We've talked a little bit about DCC. It's a really fantastic book series. I
Mm-hmm.
highly recommend it for anybody who's into RPGs, because they say it's a literary RPG story. It is very much so. But they're making a TV show, and everybody is worried that the TV show is not going to be able to hold up to what the book is. Well, the book's not. I mean, it's a very descriptive book, and they do a very good job of describing each character and describing the settings and the areas, but it's not descriptive on a level of like an Asimov story, right?
Mm-hmm.
um like Asimov would tell you the color of the floor along with the color of, you know, this tile is green, that tile is purple, the other tile is red, and none of this has actual weight in when it comes to the story other than telling you what the color of the tiles on the floor are.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Dungeon Crawler Carl does sort of like you were talking about, leaving that open to the imagination, leaving you draw the mental image in your head. And I think that's where a lot of like books to movies do fail, is because we have this image in our head. When I read Harry Potter the first time, I did not imagine it to look like that movie series.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came out looking like the movie series, I was like, well, this isn't what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I mean,
Go ahead.
there's very few books to movies that have carried over well. Well, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. There's a lot that have changed that have made it better. There's a lot that have changed that have made it worse. But it's just interesting.
Yeah, but I wonder
Sorry.
if the rise of, we'll call it television and film, and it being so much more ubiquitous and accessible has changed that populist creativity. I don't know if that's the right term, but you know what I mean? Like the creativity of the general public.
Right.
I just the but I mean, yeah, like it's like you said, Rush is a fantastic one for stuff to like, and I'm drawing a blank on which song it's from, but the line, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
I
How many times can you apply that at the gaming table?
think that's Limelight, isn't it?
It might be Limelight. That sounds mm, no, Free Will.
Free Will. That's the book, or that's the song. Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Man,
I
Rush
mean,
has
like,
so many good
oh
songs.
my gosh, and like, okay, we're tangenting a little bit, but
I
it's
don't.
okay because it's our podcast.
I
Uh,
don't.
like the other thing that I think about, man, when you listen to Rush and you realize how much of that was recorded and tracked in the free digital era,
Oh yeah.
and the engineering and the work that had to go in to make those records.
I don't mean this as a dig to anybody who's an audio engineer now, because you have skills that I don't have, but you can't tell me that being an audio engineer back then was not being an actual like engineer.
It it is different.
It
You know what I
is.
mean?
It's very
It's
different. Now it's a
yeah.
lot of finding the right plug in and using computer skills. Back then it was literally, how am I going to use this patch cable to make that sound?
It's the patch cable. It's putting the mic in the right spot. It's going, no, we need to set up in this corner of the room, or we need to set up in that room, or
I saw, oh, this just kicked an image into my head. Somebody was in the echo chamber, the literal echo chamber where the Beatles recorded a lot of their songs. And
mm-hmm,
it's a big empty room with granite columns because they echo properly.
mm-hmm,
Like just arranged around in a room to make it nice and hollow and echoey.
mm-hmm.
You don't do that nowadays. You put somebody in a quiet booth and then you add echo to them in the system afterwards.
Well, for the most part, although there's a Nile record from, well, close to 20 years ago now, probably, where there's an acoustic track on that record that was recorded in these natural salt caverns that are like below or near the studio, and it's wild. The because they actually recorded it on like a catgut guitar, and all the verb on it is the natural room reverb of this cavern where they recorded
Ugh.
it.
Ugh. It's just gross. It's just gross. It's so nice. It's such a different. It's so weird. It's like we live in two different worlds. Like I don't know how else to put it.
Well, it's technology is a blessing and a curse, right? Because look, we couldn't do what we're doing right now
No, no, we
when
could not.
I was in college. I mean,
But
yes, that was 30 years ago or thereabouts, but so it has enabled a lot, but I don't know. I think, and this is maybe another rabbit hole to dive down, but I think it can apply to gaming, right? Like we always talk about how good is this system, how good is that system, the tools and using them.
right.
And I've been kind of falling down a woodworking rabbit hole of late. And
No, Steve, don't fall down that one. That one
oh,
leads to expensive hobbies.
oh, gee, like yeah, I don't have that problem already. But there's this thing of do you need the greatest version of the tool and the blah blah blah. And I kind of was thinking about it, and I wonder if I'm inaccurate to think of tools, and this could really apply to anything, be it gaming, whatever. They're an amplifier of your skill. And I don't mean that to say that they take your skill and make it better. I mean, they take your skill level and they make it maybe more apparent in some cases.
Right.
And so in saying that, and this probably doesn't apply to gaming tools, but like for example, I'm not that skilled at woodworking at this point. I could probably, once it's functional, you can hand me a cheap plane or a really expensive plane, and it's not going to make a big difference in how smooth I get the board. But if you put those same tools in the hand of someone who has years and years of skill, they can, their skill, well, yes, they can probably get a better result with the cheap tool than I can. They can get an astounding result with that really nice tool. And so I guess in a sense, what I'm saying is maybe don't fall into the trap of thinking, well, I need this game or this tool or this thing to make me a better GM, but instead work on your craft and use those tools to accentuate what you're doing.
it's
And as your skill grows, you'll use those tools more fully.
it's like anything. It's all about the fundamentals. Once you have strong, steady fundamentals, everything else falls in. Once no matter what system you're running, no matter what tools you're handed, as long as you know how to use a plane properly, you can be handed almost any plane and make it work.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a matter of learning how to use a plane properly. It's a matter of learning how to use the tools at hand, no matter what tool set you're handed, and just understand the fundamentals of that tool. It's the difference between, when I first started out in this hobby, I was terrified of other games because I didn't know how different they would be from D&D, and I didn't know how different this rule set's going to be. And as soon as you start looking at stuff, you go, "Oh, this is very similar. The only difference is this and this." When you start
It's the shape
comparing,
of the rock you roll.
exactly. When you start comparing the similarities and not just the differences, it makes a huge difference. It makes you realize that, oh, this is not as scary as I thought it would be. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
a matter of knowing that the story that you're telling is strong, that your players are engaged into it, and no matter what rule set you're playing by, you're going to have, you have those fundamentals, and everybody's going to walk away from having a good time. Now, whether you played that game technically accurate or not is completely between you and that game's rule set, and that is on your business. And I want to transition from that. Actually, I had a thought.
Mm-hmm.
The internet was in an uproar a little while back because, Brennan Lee Mulligan is running the newest edition of Critical Role.
Right.
And he allowed a situation where dice should have been rolled. I argue that dice probably should have been rolled, but he let a player character just talk their way through a situation instead of rolling dice. And everybody on the internet's like, I can't believe he let them do this. And I was like, I would do that at a table. If one of my player characters is describing something to a glorious effect, and it's such an elaborate, in the way that they were describing it was such an elaborate and interesting way to do it, I
Mm-hmm.
would be like, yeah, you do it. Like, you've got this thought out. That's a cool event. That's a cool sequence. It's yours. I'll give that to you. Now,
Mm-hmm.
granted, should there maybe have been some kind of role? Probably. Is that the wrong way of playing that game? People online argue that it is. I really don't care. It was a cool sequence. And in my book, and I know in most D&D books, it tells you to play with the rule of cool, you know?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's about you and your table having a good time.
Exactly. Now,
But
granted,
I,
those are professionals, and understanding that those are professionals and they're professionals at what they do, and so that was a highly improv moment. Understanding all of that, that's a different beast. But as an example for your own table, yeah, that's if you're cool with it, your players are cool with it, and nobody's making a stink at the table that, oh, this needed to be rolled on, then go with it.
yeah, and I mean, okay, Exalted has the stunt system that, so to speak, the GM can give you bonus dice in a situation like that.
Yeah.
So that's a mechanical, but again, like I think there's something to be said for viewing the gaming table as like a storytelling circle. And yeah, maybe sometimes you just don't roll because, well, to quote GM Chris, don't roll unless failure is interesting. And this person has just described this wonderful whatever setup, and if that fails, it's not really
Then it's
interesting.
No, it's not. It's not. And yeah, I just I saw this Discord a few weeks back and was like, I need to talk about that because it was frustrating from a GM side of things, especially somebody who plays a lot of stuff that isn't D&D, to be like, oh, well, D&D, you have to roll dice. It says in the book. I don't care what the book says. I'll throw that book out the window.
Yeah, I mean, I
And people
think
are like, oh, well, at what point does it become just storytelling? I was like, well, it's always been just storytelling. We make up these arbitrary rules on when we roll dice. None of that matters. There's no physical penalty for rolling dice or not rolling dice. You don't get, like, I don't get money back. It's not like a casino. I don't get money if I crit a roll.
right. I mean, well, I think though, okay, let's go back to Lake Geneva in the early 70s for just a second. And no, neither you or I were there,
No.
but um, you know, the original concepts was essentially a focused down version of historical esque wargaming. And so, in that context, yeah, you roll for stuff. But I think the games, the hobby, the execution of it has evolved to that's not what this is anymore. At least not for most of us.
I completely agree. And I think if you're looking for that type of game, it exists out there for you, and you are very welcome to play that. But I think at this point, a lot of role playing is just narrative, and rolling dice is fun. Rolling dice adds tension, but I don't know. It just doesn't. I didn't see the reason for the outcry, if you know what I'm saying. And it
Well,
could
I
just be
mean,
the internet being the internet and overreacting to something that, doesn't necessarily need to be overreacted to. That happens. It's the internet overreacting to something that happens at private tables every day of the week. But at the same time, eh, I just still don't see the reason for the outcry because it happens at private tables every day of the week. if I'm sitting down with my friends and my buddy tells me this huge diatribe of things that he's doing, I'm not going to interrupt him and be like, all right, roll me this dice, roll me that die, roll me this die, roll me that die. I'm going to let him keep talking. And if I really want him to roll something afterwards, I'm going to be like, okay, give me this roll. And, you know, the consequences aren't necessarily going to contradict exactly what he said. It might be, something slightly different than what was said.
Yeah. I think some of it too comes down to like when remember way back when we talked with Jay Little and he was talking about that weird dice failure thing that could happen with wizards in Warhammer 3rd edition.
Yes.
And how he said, yes, they were aware that it could happen, but he said the thing that they didn't kind of factor in, if you will, is that, well, yes, they knew there was a whatever the number was percent chance that this could happen, that in the sample size of the real world or the consumer world of people playing the games, that happens a lot because your sample size is so it's not a sample size anymore.
Right. Yeah, it's you're no
And because it's we'll call it a spectacular occurrence, it gets amplified by the existence of the internet and people going, "Oh, this happened." Like because we've talked about music a lot this week, the Gibsons breaking their headstocks.
Gibsons have always broke their headstocks.
They do, but not as much as the internet memes would have you believe.
Well, yeah. Yeah, that's also true. The internet does take things and tend to run with them. And yeah, you got a Gibson with a broken headstock. I got a
Look, Greenie has a broken headstock
yeah.
multiple times. The infamous Greenie that now is in the possession of Kirk Hammett.
I
But
used to not to tangent too much, but I used to watch this luthier on YouTube. And I don't remember what his name was, but he was always fixing Gibson headstocks. It would be like, we got a Gibson in, it needs new strings and a broken headstock.
I mean, some of it is it. Look, the traditional Gibson headstock design for electrics is more prone to breaking than the Fender design.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of uh what do you call that?
Wood being
Mechanical
wood,
dynamics. Yeah, basically. Wood being wood. We've shaved this so thin and then it just cracks because it cracks along the grain because they always crack along the grain.
right?
Like
And because
I've seen very few Gibson headstocks that were cracked in places that weren't like along the grain of the wood.
right, and yet now no one talks about Dean's for headstocks breaking off, and how many videos do you see of Dimebag Darrell riffing away with the headstock flapping in the breeze?
Yeah, well,
I mean,
nobody
that's a
talks
whole
about
different level of.
Dean's. Nobody talks about Dean guitars is part of the problem.
But I mean, you get what I'm saying,
No,
right?
I get
It's the
exactly what you're saying.
same general concepts that cause it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
All right. Well, any final thoughts on this subject?
I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think just sometimes, man, pay attention to what you're hearing around you, and sometimes you can find little nuggets.
Yeah,
Be it
hold on loosely and don't let go.
and look in, look out, look around.
Uh, well, with all that being said, let's go ahead and move into game of the week.
Woohoo! Game of the week.
Game of the week. Game of the week.
So my game of the week is called Our Horror Story, and I'm bringing it over to you. It's coming in the room where we post those things momentarily. Hibla.
I am.
Our Horrors. So this is a rules light, diceless, collaborative storytelling game set in the genre of horror. Its intent is to evoke the feelings and memories of sitting around a campfire, telling your friends with thrilling, terrifying tales. Using randomly assigned prompts, players take turns adding to a communal story. This is from the description on drive-through, um, and it just looks like a fun. I love these kind of games where you could play it basically sitting around a campfire. You could play it at a table. You could play it while you were camping somewhere. You don't need much. It's pay what you want. And it's just a simple little 45-page RPG about telling horror stories to your friends.
Mm-hmm. Diceless.
Yeah. 120 story prompts, 12 story events. I think it looks fun. I think it could be a lot of
Mm-hmm.
fun. So,
Yeah, it does. And
there's
the
something.
cover art is highly amusing.
It is. I love that cover art with the marshmallows dripping in blood and the eyeballs. It's fun. It's
And it,
fun.
it kind of reminds me of the Yip 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 monsters from Sesame Street.
Yes, yes, it does. It does kind of have that. Um, but yeah, that's like I said, that's our horror story
All right.
from Mike Chenoweth.
All right. Well, hang on a second and let me copy and paste the link to mine. So the game I'm going to pick this week is something I found it on drive through tonight while I was, you know, after I got home from work before we started recording. It's only been out for, I don't know, about 2 weeks. It's a game called Legends of Akaroth, Songs of a Lost Age from a company called Crosspath Press. Um, Not a cheap game. I mean, it's 27 and change for the PDF, but it is a almost 350 page document. But there's a couple things I found really cool about this. One, this is it claims itself to be an epic JRPG inspired adventure filled with nostalgia and hopeful fantasy. Picture the moment where your hero's journey begins not with a whisper, but with a call to adventure that echoes through your very soul. And so this is very much in that, and I think somewhere down later in the listing, it very much is, yeah, here it is, a love letter to the Super Nintendo era. You know, those
Yeah,
JRPGs on the Super
it
NES.
it reminds me of a lot of I don't want to say modern, but a lot of modern indie JRPG like I won't even list any, but like stuff like the Final Fantasy remakes that reminds me of that a lot. But it reminds me of just yeah, it's got that look. A lot of the artwork in the book has sort of a top down JRPG like SNES, NES type look to it.
Hmm.
Um, I, it looks cool, man.
You
It's
know, it says
fun.
16 different kin, which are what they use is species or whatever your nomenclature for that is, 12 classes, and then 48 jobs, which I'm not
Yeah,
sure exactly how that ties in. A whole bunch of event prompts. Here's what I think is really cool about this, though it's built to be able to be played solo, duet, GM-less, or GM led,
right. I
which
do
I
like that.
think is fantastic.
Just having all of the options for how you want to play the game
Yes.
is great.
And so obviously because it's solo, it has tons of event prompts, outcome prompts, uh, you know, just stuff for, build base building, pets, farming, fishing, limit breaks, you know, it says quick resolution using D6s for character actions and single resolution damage rolls using a full set of standard dice. So I mean, and then I again, this is fairly new. Um, I went down and checked. Now it's only been rated 6 times, but it's got an average rating of 4.3 stars.
Yeah, so the people that have rated it liked it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, like I said, it just looks neat and cool. And like I said, the thing that honestly drew me to it as much as anything, and yes, there's probably is some of that nostalgia, but the fact that it's solo duet, GMless, or GM led. I mean, good grief. Is there any other way to play that they didn't include? I,
Not that I can think of.
like, gee, it just looks kind of, and it has that kind of cozy vibe to it too, which is sometimes just the thing.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes just the thing is just the thing. So,
So yeah, that's called Legends of Akaroth or Akaroth, Akeroth. But like always, there'll be links in the show description notes wherever, you know, there'll be links to find it if you scroll down from whatever it is that you're listening to us on, be it podcatchers, YouTube, whatever else. Um, as of yet, you still don't get to see our faces on YouTube because I don't
we
have
still
the
haven't
time
figured
to
out
learn to
that
edit video.
technology. Yeah, we still don't have the time for that technology. But
um,
yeah, as always, links to everything are down in the doobly doo. Like Steve would mention, Facebook. We don't post on Facebook anymore. What am I saying? Uh,
no, no. I don't
Discord.
post on X or Twitter or whatever the hell it's called. Occasionally I
No.
post on Blue Sky,
Uh,
if I remember.
If I remember Blue Sky exists, I use it. But no, it's Discord. You wanna contact us, you wanna yell at us, you wanna tell us we're doing our jobs wrong, it's Discord. Follow us on any podcatchers, YouTube. Like Steve said, we're not on video yet, but we're getting there. I don't know that we'll ever get there, but anyways, as always, we want to remind everyone to be kind to one another and get out there and play some RPGs.
Yep. Take care, y'all.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast, on Discord at Me and Steve RPGs, and as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.